I will say this, Aaron, when you run an event and you seek out keynote speakers, man, you talk about abundance. Like they want to help in any way they can, even if they're getting paid or not. So we paid a lot of them, but we also they gifted their time to us, like all the people in VaynerMedia. We never paid them for that time that they spent on our keynote stages. But I still have relationships. Like I could still text the president of VaynerMedia because of the event. Because of the event, I have friends within Bigger Pockets. All this stuff, just wonderful things happen if you can create your own event.
Erik, welcome to the show.
It's so good to be here with you again, Aaron. I always love spending time with you on the mic.
Well, I tell you what, yeah, a lot of fun to talk to. Wealth of information, really, and definitely patient as we just went through that whole rigmarole before uh, the live stuff, the real stuff. Uh, that was hilarious. I This was it was one of those things, like when we were building the TikTok channel, the whole COVID thing, when everybody was like, "Why don't we just do TikTok?" Um, my wife just used to drive her nuts about how many takes, how long it took to make a 60-second cooking show. I mean, so you definitely have more patience than she does.
Hey, but it worked. You guys created an explosion on TikTok and built a whole company out of it. So
Oh my gosh. And it's a lot of fun. And so is this. I love talking to people, especially those in the industry, like media, podcasting, who, know familiar with the behind the scenes kind of thing. And uh well, why don't we start with that? Like it wasn't you didn't like leave high school thinking you would be. I mean, was it podcasting even a thing? Was you were like, I'm going to be a brand expert. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to brand stuff and people. So how did you get into the podcasting world, into um, helping entrepreneurs, other people build their brands?
yeah, you're right. It wasn't an idea that I thought of or imagined in high school. In high school, honestly, Aaron, I was a horny little kid, right? And I loved models, supermodels. I would have them hanging on my walls. Cindy Crawford. I'm going to date myself. Stephanie Seymour. I forgot what they called them. The Fab Five, whatever they had. They had some name for these supermodels. Naomi Campbell, all these ladies. And I had the ability to draw, like comic books. And I would sketch these models and hang them all over my wall. And I was just a, you know, typical teenager getting into trouble. And one day my dad realized, hey, this kid's a junior in high school. I'm going to pull him by the ear and bring him over to an art school. So he drove me up to Sullivan County College in New York, Sullivan County, all the way upstate. And I saw that being in the world of art was actually a way to make a living. I couldn't even imagine that this was a real thing. There were drafting tables, there were cameras, there were artists walking around with, portfolios, pencils, all the things. So I was in, and that's basically what started my whole career. I got into, what I thought I would get into was illustration, and then I found out that I was nowhere near as good as all the kids who were drawing, already working for Marvel, working for DC comic books, all of these things. These were kids sitting next to me at the other drafting table, and I was like, I can't compete with these guys. Let me come up with something else, and that was graphic design. That was designing logos, getting really intimate with typography, and that started to develop eventually into logos and branding in my career. So that's where it all started, Aaron.
That's cool. In fact, I'm looking for a new logo myself. But that's interesting that how you describe that because my family, artists, my mom's side of the family, sketch artists, painters, all of that. I had the creative spark, but it was in the kitchen, and I thought early on that I wanted to become a chef, and realized that uh, I was okay. I was okay. I was an okay cook, but it was also one of those things where I love to cook, and I joined the Navy as a cook, and worked my way up to become admiral's chef. But I loved cooking. I loved being a sailor. I hated cooking in the Navy, but one of those things where I realized that it wasn't the career path for me. So
But you did it for a while too. How long did it take for you to realize you didn't like wanted to do it forever? You did it. You made your way up that ladder. It took how long did it take you?
well, that's how they get you. Yeah, whether it's the civilian world or the military world, every once in a while they throw you a bone with a little promotion, a little more responsibility, a little more leadership, right? Yeah, and just a tiny bit more money, and you keep climbing that ladder. You're like, all right, I'll start that, that creative path. I'll find my own way next year or whatever someday. But you did spend some time in the corporate world,
Oh yeah,
and you
21
learned
years.
a thing or two about a thing or two. But when did you make that transition?
The transition into corporate or leaving corporate?
Leaving corporate, doing your own thing, becoming an entrepreneur.
It was, yeah, over 2 decades of living a life of drinking, smoking, hanging out with my friends, and as some people may be able to imagine, based off televisions and movies, the art world, the creative world, agencies, New York, all those things. It's true. It's not really an exaggeration. There's a lot of competition, and not much of it is unhealthy competition. And then there's also the idea that there's just beautiful young people, everybody, and there's a lot of alcohol involved. Where, so I just got to the point where I was growing tired of that. I was married. We had our first baby. I was still living in that type of world. I didn't like all the temptation around me. And the second was on the way, and that's when I realized the road was starting to fork, and I was either going to continue on this path and actually gaining more notoriety and gaining more responsibility. Not necessarily much more in terms of paycheck. It was gradually going up. I was realizing I was hitting a ceiling for sure. Like this is the most I was going to make as a creative director in corporate world, and that's when I started to read and recognize you have to be a partner or in the firm or the company, or you need to own the business. So that's when I was like, oh, let me start exploring this. And an opportunity to lead a team in New York City and in Chicago. That was a dream of mine to lead a team and grow a team in terms of creative agencies. And I saw my whole life flash before me, Aaron. Like I was getting fatter, I was getting more and more miserable. I was probably eventually going to cheat on my wife. There was all these things that were just it was, I could see it. It was not a pretty future. So I decided to not take that opportunity, and I took that opportunity to figure out what I wanted to do. And while I was figuring out what I wanted to do, a purple book landed in my lap that you are aware of, by Robert Kiyosaki, called Rich Dad Poor Dad. And that just changed my whole life. And I was like, I'm going to become a real estate investor, which my wife was like, what are you talking about? Where's this come from? You don't know anything about real estate. I was like, I'll figure it out. And I did. Bought my first multifamily building in less than a year of leaving corporate. So yeah, we were really blessed to be able to do all that.
When did GoBundance come into play? Because I know you've talked about that before.
Yeah, so it's all a blur, but I would say they were a huge influence on where I went, because after reading the book, I needed to educate myself on how to do it. You know, the book inspires you the why, like this is why you need to do it, but nowhere does it tell you the
Yeah,
actionable
that
steps.
Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's literally there's almost no real estate in there at all, but it's like the number one real estate book ever.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then eventually he got involved with courses and stuff by selling the name off to people. And I bought into those programs. Oh my gosh, spent tens of thousands of dollars on that. But Bigger Pockets was the cheaper avenue to get my education. I did both. And during that process, I just networking, making friends with people, finding local people led me to Bigger Pockets. Like, Josh Dorkin, Brandon Turner, all those guys who were the hosts of the show at the time, and we became friends through GoBundance. That was my avenue and way to get closer to them, which was really cool, because then eventually my company started working with Bigger Pockets to produce shows. Started working with a lot of the folks there, like Jay Scott. They all became friends. So yeah, it was just working my way, making connections. You realize all these people who are your heroes are just people, and they're approachable. And if you have value to add in their life, then yeah, it could become a reality. Something I would never have thought of, the year two prior to being in corporate, like that I would be sidling up to the guys who inspire me. Kiyosaki got on our show too at some point. So yeah, as long as you keep pushing and realizing there's really no limits, all that. you live that. It's pretty amazing, what you could do.
And you know, a lot of those guys that are kind of household names, especially in the real estate world, they yeah, like you said, they're normal people. I went out to uh, be on Brandon Turner's show out in Maui, his second show, the Better Life, and just hanging out with him. Met David Green happened to be out there at the same time, so got to sit down and chat with him for a little while. And they are the difference is though that they found their their message, their story. They got focused on what their, I guess, superpower was, right? And that's, I guess that's true for you when you started to really find your success, when it started to take off. It, how did you define what you would be doing? You were a real estate, you started in real estate investing, but then your your experience was in the media world, right?
Yeah, yeah. It was definitely a journey to figure it out. As I was really literally invested in real estate, my brand reflected that. But my heart was moving me towards media and leaning into what I found passion in. I'm a tech geek. I love figuring out cameras and lighting and microphones. So within the real estate world, people started to recognize, oh, there's the podcast guy. But Aaron, I wasn't the podcast. Like I didn't think of myself as that. So, a good friend of mine, you probably know him through Bigger Pockets as well, Matt Faircloth. He was really he was the key for me to get the introductions to Bigger Pockets and Go Abundance back in the day. But he was a big champion in my corner. He would say, "You're the podcast guy. Just own it." He's like, "You're painting yourself with that brush, dude. Everybody sees you as that. Just own it." So when I heard that and I took that advice, that's when I really started to step into, okay, I think I'm going to pause on real estate. I'm still interested and I'm still looking for potentially passive investments, but I think I'm going to focus all my energy and passion into building this media company. So that's when working with Bigger Pockets was super helpful for the brand as it was launching. Launching bigger names, like Jay Scott, things like that was definitely helpful in the beginning. But now, 5-6 years later, um, we don't necessarily need to leverage other brands. People recognize our brand, which I feel truly blessed. They think we're way bigger than we are, so it's good. We're a full-fledged YouTube podcast launching company, social media company, that really helps mostly real estate investors. Like half of our clientele are real estate investors. But yeah, we work with everybody. VaynerMedia has been a long time client of ours, so it's a mixed bag of clients that we have. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
First, where did you where, you said you just became the podcast guy, or you became known as the podcast guy, but what were you doing then before you actually took ownership of it? You were helping others with theirs? You were being a frequent guest? What was happening there?
Yeah, I wasn't guesting as much as I was more being the host. Um, as you, I'm sure, know, Aaron, when you're trying to learn something new, you want to be around people that are doing the thing that you're trying to learn and get really good at. So I was around a lot of really interesting real estate investors that all had these unique stories. And in the hallways, I would always kick myself because I'm like, man, I wish I had a microphone to record this, because the conversations on Bigger Pockets were so helpful. I was also thinking about these conversations that are being had in private, and how can I benefit by listening back to those, but then also sharing those with people that are not in the room, that are not in the hallways. So that's when I started to bring a microphone and then eventually a camera to the real estate meetups. And then eventually it became more of a formal setup where I would put a table. It looked like a sponsorship table with lights and cameras and microphones. And eventually that's when people started to point at these real estate meetings. Oh, go to Erik, the podcast guy. That's when all the sponsors would come to me. That's when all the big real estate guys, whoever was speaking on stage that day, they would come to me first. And that's when it started, really. And then I started to turn those into podcasts. The intention was not for it to be a podcast. It was just really for me, my edification, and then also to live stream the actual event so that the real estate meetup would get promotion out of it, but really not for me or my brand. But it ended up turning out to be a wonderful gift because Entrepreneur Circle was born out of it. And, I started to interview people like Randy Zuckerberg, which gave, who is Mark Zuckerberg's sister, who created fan pages, by the way. So all these things that started to happen before the show even really became official started to give it more and more attention. And then grew the company eventually because people started to listen to the show and be a guest on the show and then say, "Hey, Erik, who produces your show? I'd love one just like it. Can you recommend them?" And I would say, "That's me. That's us. That's my guy." Like I had one guy at the time. And yeah, eventually that just became the business. I'm like, I think this is not a branding agency. This is probably a podcast agency.
I do the same thing sometimes. Put us, the team. I'm sending this to the team. It's me, just, but the team is me. But so you started building up on-air brands, and you started helping kickstart and produce and market these podcasts. Is it strictly real estate? You expanded into other entrepreneurial podcasts?
Yeah, because a lot of these real estate investors eventually their companies become big enough where it runs without them, and then they have a lot of side projects, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
passions. So a lot of our clients and shows on the back end, they are real estate investors and they're brokers, owners, title. They have all the things, but they start something else through the podcast, and the podcast is a vehicle for them to get on stages, to
Mm-hmm.
build their personal brand, right? To promote their book. The whole ecosystem eventually evolves. So we're with them through that journey. There's been times where we've launched a podcast. They were strictly real estate, and then eventually they're like, I'm writing a book. Okay, then the book and the podcast become one thing. We changed the name to reflect the whole brand, and then
Mm-hmm.
eventually it becomes a community. It becomes coaching. It becomes consulting. All that stuff. We love to see it evolve. We know where the podcast can take them. But yeah, there are some that are just strictly passion projects, or a passion project that's also aligned with marketing for their business. So we have one
Mm-hmm.
client who's a bespoke tailor. So he, dude, I'm blessed to have these clients because he made me one as well. He made me cut from one cloth, a suit. That's amazing. But he needed a podcast to create awareness, brand awareness, to let people know what he's doing. He's been around for a long time, and now he's like, I need to level up. I want to get on YouTube and show people what we do.
Yeah, that's a great question that I just thought of myself and just complimented myself for thinking of it. But no, uh, you innovated also beyond just like the production and branding, but you also started Podmax, uh, and this is a live virtual uh, event that you get entrepreneurs to become the star of the show and get interviewed by multiple podcasts. How did you come up with that? How did you develop that?
Oh man, I wish I could say and take all the credit for that. I basically brought it to the real estate world. So what happened was I went into New York City. I have a friend that owns a comedy club in New York City, and he said, "Hey, I'm doing this thing with James Altucher, famous author, financial guy, and he wants to interview you." And I'm like, "Me, little old me, I'm a nobody." And he's like, "Well, you and a bunch of other people. So why don't you come to the Comedy Store, and we're gonna just do a round of podcasts." So lo and behold, I go there, and it's a bunch of podcasters that are interviewing people, and the environment was just electric. And there was so much excitement because there were startups, there were companies that were well established, and they were being not interviewed not just on James's show, James Altucher's shows, but on other people's shows. So I met literally future business partners, vendors that I still work with today, at that event, probably 5-6 years ago. So I approached my friend Donnie, who ran the event. I was like, let's do this in New Jersey, but for real estate investors. I have this huge network of investors. And he goes, I don't know about that. He was like, maybe. So I was like, do you mind if I go do this myself? I want to partner with you. He's like, no, go ahead. He just assumed we were going to fail. He told me later. He told me, he's like, dude, I regret not partnering with you because I saw everything you did. So I renamed it Podmax, and I invited all my real estate friends, and everyone showed up, Aaron. Big brands, little brands, locals, all the people that I was meeting on the local stages showed up, paid a ticket of up to $3,000 so that they can be at, on Cash Flow Ninjas show, things like that, Matt Faircloth's show, Bigger Pocket stuff. So I was like, whoa, so this is a viable product or service that I think might work. So that first event was proof of concept. And then we did 13 of them in total, virtual and live. I think we did about 4 live up until 2020 when everything shut down. And then we went virtual. I think we did probably 8, 9, do the math, virtually. But I will say this, Aaron, when you run an event and you seek out keynote speakers, man, you talk about abundance. Like they want to help in any way they can, even if they're getting paid or not. So we paid a lot of them, but we also they gifted their time to us, like all the people in VaynerMedia. We never paid them for that time that they spent on our keynote stages. But I still have relationships. Like I could still text the president of VaynerMedia because of the event. Because of the event, I have friends within Bigger Pockets. All this stuff, just wonderful things happen if you can create your own event.
After these messages, we'll be right back. I'd like to thank the sponsor of this episode, Extraordinary Delights, EODFudge.com. Extraordinary Delights is a disabled veteran, family-owned small business making handcrafted fudge and other sweet treats for the chocolate-loving patriots just like you. Go to EODFudge.com and check out some of our delicious flavors like triple threat chocolate with or without walnuts, mint dark chocolate, strawberry and creamy white chocolate, or my personal favorite, American Pick-Me-Up, an all-American version of tiramisu. While you're there, go to the apparel store and check out our awesome t-shirts, polos, and the baddest tactical apron on the market. You see me wear on the TikTok show, Aaron Hale's Cook Without Looking. So right now, go over to EODFudge.com and pick out some fudge, other sweet treats for that patriot in your life with a sweet tooth. That's EODFudge.com. EODFudge.com. And now, back to the show. That's fantastic. What was it? 2020, you went virtual. How's that been working out? Is it you stayed virtual? Do you
Oh my
still
gosh.
do in person?
So we no longer run the event. I honestly had to reflect on and pause on what I was going to focus on, because it was first real estate, and then it was on-air brands, and then it was PodMax. Something had to give, and it was PodMax, and then eventually real estate. So the only company that I am currently active in is on-air brands, and those other ones had to go because I just was spreading myself too thin, and I had to go where I thought would have longevity and I could scale. The events company is challenging for sure. It was profitable at times, it was break even at times, but for the most part, Aaron, it was we would lose. It was a loss leader, but it gave On Air Brands business. So that's where I realized, oh, I gotta do this. Let's just keep On Air Brands going.
Organizing an in-person or virtual event, to me, trying to keep all that together and running that's just like my picture of hell. Just being a speaker and trying showing up on time, for me, that's tough enough. But I couldn't imagine the whole event and getting people that no shows, people who do the soft commits and all that kind of stuff. Anyways,
it's a beast, and it takes a certain group of individuals to make it happen. Stereotypically speaking, women are better organized than us. And they just know how to manage a lot of different things and make sure nothing falls through the cracks. So the event PodMax really only truly worked when I had a stellar events coordinator on the team. When it was me and my bros running it, yeah, it was okay. It ran well. Nobody could tell that we were making a mess behind the scenes. But whenever there was a young woman, typically, that loves events and loves loving on people, man, it was so much fun.
Stereotypical creatives.
Yeah, exactly. We just make a mess of things. I come up with the ideas, but I can't run the show.
This sounds like a whole lot of fun. Somebody do it for me.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so On Air Brands, how do you know what show, what creator, what brand is going to work, is going to be successful? How do you know what client to take on and who may not fit the On Air Brands brand?
Yeah, absolutely. So an easy one, and I'll tell this through story. I had a woman reach out to me. We took a meeting, and one of the things she said right off the bat within the first 5 minutes is, my kids are always asking me, how come I'm not famous yet? Because I crush it on TikTok or Instagram, whatever it was. She's like, and right there, I thought, wow, you're doing this for the wrong reasons, lady. Like, you're trying to become famous. And, not necessarily, I could get it if you want to do something big and inspiring for your children. But further through the conversation, I could sense she was really in it to become famous. That's not typically who we work with, because I think that, well, number one, you're setting yourself up for failure. And then number two, it's just not sustainable, because at the end of the day, what are the metrics you're using? And then also, what is really buried in your heart that you care enough about that you'd do it for free, and if nobody's watching? So those are the people that I look for. The people that have the passion, the heart, to truly help people. They know that what they do could potentially serve someone, pull them out of depression, save a life in some certain ways. Those are the people that I want to work with typically, and not the people that just want to pound their chest and then tell people that they have 1 million followers.
Want to do it for free? Heck, I've been paying through the nose to do this. Yeah, not just free, but I get to pay for the privilege to be a podcaster. Uh, but okay, so you take on the client. How do you help them develop their brand? And what is that? I mean, it's not just the logo; it's the reputation. So, how do you get to the core of who this client is?
Yeah, yeah. So typically, our framework starts with them. Like I said earlier, what's in the heart. Like, what are your values? What's your systems and beliefs that keep you consistent every day? Or are you still floundering? As a 20-something-year-old kid, I was still trying to figure out what my core values were. I was this way one day and another the next. But as you get older and you start to experience life, especially as a parent, you start to see the consistent things that have helped you along the way. And hopefully you start to shed the things that aren't helping you. Like for me, it was drinking and doing all sorts of other things.
Supermodels,
So,
selling books.
yeah, chasing after supermodels, not healthy. So yeah, the core values are typically the very first step that we take. And you'd be surprised how many people don't know themselves. How many people don't sit down, take the time to identify who they are. They just run and gun, and then this let the chips fall where they may. So step number one, let's get true. Let's look in the mirror and let's own these core values. And you can shift them over time. And I always use this one as an example. Maybe it becomes faith, family, fitness, foundation, whatever it is. You have to be able to own those, because that will become your content over time. And you have to realize, oh, I'm going to speak about these three things over and over and over and over, even if it's boring for me, because that's what develops your brand over time. The reputation that you mentioned earlier is all about being consistent with the content, because if you're all over the place, you're going to confuse people. And if it's a business, everyone's heard the saying, a confused buyer never buys. And they're confused because you're giving them multiple messages. But if you stick to 1, 2, or 3 messages, then it becomes easier for you to, number one, speak about your values, because you're speaking about them all the time. So they're just like tattooed on your brain. But then also when they meet you, those are real. Like, that's you in real person, in real time, IRL, as the kids would say. So yeah, that's the very first step. And it's so important for us to make sure that those are real.
Yeah, that hits home for me quite a bit when I started this thing. I wanted it to be just like all my favorite big shows, the everything shows, right? Who Joe Rogan brings on whomever he wants, and but he does have a pattern if you pay attention, and you guys like Gary Vee and Tim Ferriss and all these big names, household names, they started off very specific. They started off hyper focused. Lewis House, he was the LinkedIn guy. And then it evolved once he had the big following. He could tell them, I'm going to do an everything show. I'm going to start bringing in other people just who are great, you know? Uh, Me, I wanted to start doing everything. So it was faith, fitness, family, finances. That's just too much. It's all over the place. And that's something you've talked about in the past, like the four C's. The very first one is clarity, right? You got to get clear on what your message is. So besides just production, do you help them develop, or do your clients, generally speaking, have something they know they want to do, and you just make it a reality?
Typically, our clients have a somewhat clear picture on what they want to do, um, the big picture. Now, the steps to get there and making sure that they develop a brand that is consistent and clear, that's when they come to us. They're like, okay, I don't know what I don't know. So let me hire the experts so that I'm doing this the right way versus kind of trying to figure it out as I go. Obviously, it'll take longer if you try to figure it out on your own. So, yes, I think that the goal is if it's clear, then it's easier to build from there. But sometimes they do come to us and they're a hot mess, and I will say, hey, do X, Y, Z, and then come back because I need you to gain clarity on this. I don't typically try to be there during that process for them if they're not ready. So what the big picture is, what the end goal is, because it will take long, and I might just get in the way. So I think that having people who are very clear on the mission is very helpful when you're starting the brand. Because if you're in a stage where you don't know what the end mission is, you're still building the the product or the service, there's a lot going on. So I think once you identify like who you serve and what your mission and purpose is, then it gets easier to start laying down the foundation of your brand, so that you can build on top of that versus the other way around.
So the first question to you shouldn't be, how do I get advertisers?
Yeah.
How do I
Yeah,
get how
that's
do I
another
get
red
people to
flag.
sponsor my show?
Dude, that's a huge red flag. People come, they don't, there's less of that now. But back in the day, meaning 4, 5, 6 years ago,
Yeah.
people would say that, how do I monetize? They don't even have a channel yet, bro. Like, what are you talking about? How you talking about monetizing air? Nothing exists. It's crazy.
So develop your voice, the message, know who you're talking to, and then build that fan base, right? The loyal listeners, the loyal followers, and you help produce it, help, I guess, cut away some of that fat and clarify the message.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the bulk of the heavy lifting is done in the early days of the strategy, because once that's established, we're creating a playbook. We're creating a Bible for them to go back to ensure that everything that's built from there is the same. It's consistent. So we're less involved with the brand and the show, in terms of the strategy and the message as the show is launched. I mean, we still work with them at that level, but just the majority of that time is spent in the beginning. But you're right. The once the show is launched, it's weekly episodes on YouTube. It's all the shorts, it's all the reels, it's all the posts on LinkedIn. It's all of the things that you would come to expect with a brand, um, but now built in an engine with an engine that's making it consistent. Now, as far as the messaging, that's up to the host to be consistent with their message, and hopefully, all the work we did up front creates that.
For somebody who wants to get started, how important is video? Should they be going straight to YouTube, or should they do audio first?
So, audio is a good way to cut your teeth, but right now it's all about video for sure. I would say if you're going to do it and in your mind you're committed to doing it and you know it's going to grow not just your brand, but you as an individual, right? You're going to get better at public speaking. You're going to get better at formulating your thoughts and sharing those in a cohesive way that's valuable to an audience. That takes time. That takes consistency. So I would say yes, through video first. But if you want to start really quickly, you can do audio only. But know that video is the most effective way to build trust because they can see you, they can hear you, they can, get a sense of who you are through your actions. It's really important to be on video for sure. YouTube is the place. Spotify has gotten into the game and they're allowing creators to post video within Spotify, but it's not at the level, nowhere near as YouTube is. I would say the easiest way to start would be to live stream. So using something like StreamYard and plugging your YouTube account to it, your LinkedIn account, your Facebook account, it will publish to all of them at the same time. So there's no going back. Once you hit, go live, and then you don't have to worry about producing it. You don't have to worry about, oh, is it on YouTube? Am I going on my YouTube channel? Like, yeah, you could just go live, put it all up there, and then forget about it. I wouldn't recommend forgetting about it. I'd recommend making thumbnails and stuff for it. But yeah, that's the easiest way to get started.
Speaking of going live streaming, we're recording on Riverside, and they recently added a live stream feature to their platform. And I was playing around with it a little bit, but I just figured couldn't make all the connections, the links to the social media, and I'll go live later. And then I recorded a preamble for one of the episodes. I don't know, an hour later, after recording just the preamble, and it was the raw video, all of the outtakes and bloopers and all the fun stuff, because it takes me plenty of time to untie my tongue. No, I started getting notifications about how many views of my video on LinkedIn. I'm like, what video? And yeah, it was, as it turns out, I went live on LinkedIn and Facebook, and
Wow.
it was me talking to myself, the camera, and all of the misstarts, all of the expletives,
Dude.
everything.
Wow. It just goes to show, do people love behind the scenes? They do. Man, how funny is that? I wonder if you got like record views because of that. Did you take it down or did you leave it up there?
No, a couple of hours, because I couldn't figure out how to get it off. I mean, I'm a blind deaf guy using voiceover. I couldn't. I'm like, I don't even know how it got on. So
Wow.
I had to contact my my VA. Said, fix this, please.
Oh my gosh.
But then I thought, okay, that's an interesting idea. Why don't I do a behind the scenes? So I
Yeah.
literally I tried this once. Maybe, I don't know if it worked, but I went live and I said, "You're about to see me try to record a preamble for an upcoming show.
Really?
Wish me luck. Here we go." And I'm like, game face. Welcome back to the show. And it took me a couple takes, but I got it. And I'm like, okay, folks, there you have it. And that was my first first intentional live stream.
Wow. So that's up there for us to
Some
find.
I don't know, somewhere. Maybe.
Wow.
I don't even maybe.
That's so
And
cool.
maybe I didn't actually go live. I just thought I was.
That's awesome, dude.
Well, it's a lot of fun. Back to you because you're the guest. You've got you were talking about a blueprint. You were talking about a book. You got a book coming out pretty soon. Tell me about
Holy
that.
moly. Yeah, yeah. No, I appreciate that, brother. It's been years in the making. About 3 years ago, I started writing a book. Inspired by that dude I told you that. I was like, "Hey, you're the podcast guy, Matt." He's like, when are you gonna write your book?" I was like, "Really?" I was like, "This Jedi Master is telling this Padawan to write a book. He's giving me permission." So I started writing the book 3 years ago. I didn't want it to be about podcasting. So I thought about the thing that I was really passionate about, and still to this day, was building personal brands. There's video of me. I have to find it from 2017, where I'm talking with one of my buddies about I am going to build my personal brand, and then I'm going to intentionally start documenting the journey this way. And before everybody was talking about it, it's very commonplace now. But um, the book, I wanted to kind of deconstruct what I did in order to build my personal brand, because it was not necessarily all intentional. Um, then there was a stop start because I was speaking on stages. We were running a lot of events, so I didn't have a lot of time to focus on it. But in between time, between flights and meetings, I would write the book. Dude, I went back after maybe a year of writing, maybe less, hired a coach and everything. And I was like, this is garbage. It was so bad, dude. I was like, I wouldn't read this. Like the first maybe page or two of the first chapter was somewhat interesting, but I was like, this is not valuable to anyone. So I put a pause on it. And during that time, and I mentioned this to you before, um, I found, or he found me, the Lord found me through various different ways, of which the biggest and most impactful thing was getting off of a stage and having a line of people waiting to speak to me, which is not a human experience. That is not normal for people to experience that. It, it's a humbling experience for sure. But there was this voice in my head, dude, when I got off the stage and I saw these people, and I would speak to them in groups because they would cluster, and one of them would be crying while I'm saying something, and I don't even know what I'm saying. That's when I would walk away, reflect on that, and I heard this voice say, "You're the effing man," and I was like, "I am." And it was like this voice that was like cheering me on, but it didn't feel right. It felt really weird. So I went home. Typically, I'm exhausted. I'm sure you know this, Aaron. When you speak on stage, you get home, you just need to recharge. Like so much energy is spent at those events. So I was home. I was recharging. I didn't have any meetings, and I would go into my prayer, not prayer at the time, meditation, yoga, manifestation, Tony Robbins, all those things. And it was another voice, and that voice was like, "Do it for me. Do it for the love of others." Those, I'm paraphrasing the feelings, but that's what it was. And then I started to pray, and over time develop this relationship with God. And then the book started to come back, and it was like, okay, this personal branding book is not about me and my ego anymore. It's about giving him the glory. So that's what the book is now called. Instead of just Be Your Brand, it's called Be Your Brand to Glorify God. And it's really about building your personal brand to point upwards to the sun versus, to me, the star that everybody wanted to develop. Everybody wanted to cheer on. You're the rock star. I was like, no, 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 it ain't about me, bro. This is about something bigger than me. So yeah, I'm really excited about it, man. And thanks for allowing me to share that.
So instead of being the best you can or building that brand for you, it's uh, doing it in service of the Lord.
doing it in service of others and definitely pointing to higher power, because I think that we can build for us and build for wealth and worldly things and houses, cars, all of which I have. Um, it felt like there was an end to that. Like even when you get, dude, you walk around and meet so many successful, rich people, and a lot of them are not happy. And that always like baffled me. Like, how are you unhappy? You've got everything. It's because you're not seeking something bigger than you, which is really the real purpose for me.
Yeah, but it's a lot more comfortable to cry in a Mercedes.
It's a lot more comfortable to drown your sorrows in your own home theater, and
So it's more about doing what you're sent here, you're created to do. I love that. Well, uh, been a ton of value today. I really appreciate it, Eric. I think this is a great time to get into the final segment, which is the countdown to impact. Three, two, one. Three books, two quotes, and one person who have all made an impact in your life.
holy moly, why have I had an opportunity to prepare for this and I fumbled the ball. Uh, Definitely. So I'll have to be consistent here, but the Bible, getting into scripture, that's number one. And getting into his word. That's how I didn't understand. Oh, you got to get in a relationship with him. How do you do that? Like, this is not a tangible person. Read the word, get into scripture and start understanding it. Because there's so many resources that will explain and give you context to this foreign language, it seems, even though it's in English, it's barely, you can't understand it. But if you have apps and YouTube channels that can help you, Rich Dad, Poor Dad for sure. That changed my life. Uh, the road to get here, honestly, Hal Elrod was a big piece. Miracle Morning to get my habits formed because I just had terrible habits being from corporate America. So that is definitely, I think, a piece that helps entrepreneurs get into a cycle and a rhythm to develop healthy habits. I'd say those three books. Quotes. One of my favorite quotes, and I don't know who or where this came from, but I would get. I don't have tattoos, brother, but if I did, I would have this. Failing is success in progress. So I love that quote because my dad grew up in an era where failure was not an option. They're trying to put a man on the moon, so failure meant death. So, um, but us softies here in entrepreneurship, we need to fail, and I had to reprogram that saying as failure is success in progress. I will go with another sort of scripture thing here, but I love this one. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. So that's 1 Corinthians 13. And I love that quote because that's really it, dude. I just want to love on people. It sounds corny. But if everybody had that sort of way about them, I sense that when you and I get together, brother, it's like we just want to love and help and serve. And man, the world will be so much of a better place if we're all allowed to do that. Just give ourselves permission to do that versus always being on our guard and being distrustful and manipulative. I think if we just like lead with love, man, it sounds like a hippie movement, but I'm sure that was fun times, right?
Awesome. Yeah. And one person.
Man, one
Doesn't have to be the
person.
number one person, just a person that has made an impact in your life.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'd give it to my wife. She gives me permission to do all the things and play and break things and take risks with our money. We lost hundreds of thousands. I won't say lost. We invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into what we're doing now, which takes time. That's another thing, bro. Like everybody who's out there that's a startup or you have a wonderful job, consider that you're going to have to invest capital, not just your time and your energy, but capital.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to risk losing it all. And we've gotten very close to doing those things, but it was worth it and is worth it because we're building an asset. You built businesses, Aaron, and they become assets that you can eventually, hopefully, sell, just like real estate.
They also become your brand, right? I can't shake the fact that I'm the fudge guy.
But you came up with a clever name too, man. EOD. Yeah, all your stuff. I love your branding.
Thank you.
Smart.
Well, those are awesome answers. We'll accept them, and the team and I will accept it. Uh, I really appreciate this. Like I said, it's been an awesome guest, and it's been a lot of fun. Where can the audience, where can others find you and learn some more?
Yeah. So I have something to give your audience, especially if they're real estate investors. Go to Erik Cabral, and my name is spelled with a K. So ERIK, cabral.co/guide. And there you'll see a sheet, an FAQ, whatever you want to call it. It's a guide to real estate and personal branding. So why real estate and personal branding, you'll see in that one sheet that they can download.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate this, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, brother. Talk to you soon, man. Thank you.